So why don't we get into this Knicks saga, where the Knicks haven't played good basketball all season long. Tom Thibodeau looks like he's going to have a heart attack. Kemba Walker, who's one of my favorite players, can't stay on the court. He gets benched for almost a month. Then he comes on the court and he wins Player of the Week. Doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense with the Knicks. They bring in Evan Fournier in the beginning of the season. It looks like he's going to be a big piece offensively. And then all of a sudden he falls off. And then all of a sudden he plays a game like he had the other night that helps the Knicks win. He was a big reason why the Knicks won that game. The development of R.J. Barrett has been horrible. Absolutely horrible. But even though all the things that I just said are bad things, the worst is yet to come. Julius Randle is a man that throughout the league is very well respected and also feared. He's a big man, powerful man, good basketball player, Carmelo Anthony wannabe. This guy is not a great shooter whatsoever. He's not a good perimeter shooter. I've seen more air balls and bricks watching him Madison Square Garden than I've seen him go away when he can actually hit a shot. Last year, the fans were screaming MVP in the playoffs. MVP. And because the Knicks weren't playing well and he couldn't hit a shot if you paid him, well, they do pay him, but he couldn't hit a shot in the first and the second half, he gets booze.
Let's just say there's no bonus incentives.
So what does Julius Randle do? He puts his thumb down. And this becomes a New York thing because we saw Lindor. We saw Baez do it last year, which caused a lot of trouble with the Yankees. And the Yankees didn't like that because they thought they were dissing them, trying to play them. When you see that from Julius Randle, a talented kid, he really is. He's a great, talented player. But he's not a number one. He's not even a Robin. He's not a number two. To me, he's like an elf. A dwarf. I'm talking about Lord of the Rings, by the way. I'm not even talking about that. I love Lord of the Rings, by the way.
He's a hobbit?
He might be a hobbit. That's good. He doesn't look like one, but he might be. We'll call him Bilbo Baggins, okay?
Nice.
But honestly, the fact that after the game he comes out and he says that when they asked him what did the thumbs down mean, he pretty much said, shut the F up. When you attack the fans, those particular fans that were screaming MVP with you, what does that create? What does that stir to the ownership? What does that create to the league about who he is as a person? Could he handle a crowd, a fan base over there in New York when the crowd is on him, where he needs to hit a big shot and he misses it and he throws an air ball or a brick, which he hasn't been hitting game-winning shots since he's been here? What does this tell you, Speedy?
Well, here's the difference as well, too, between the Baez-Lindor thing and Julius Randle. With Baez, the fans started it first. They started booing him when the first week he came to the Mets, he wasn't doing anything. He was making a bunch of bonehead things, and he was being cocky, whatever. They did it first, and then Baez responded. The Knicks fans, yeah, there's going to be some that are disappointed in Julius Randle, but it's not something that every Knicks fan hates Julius Randle. There were a lot of Knicks fans still defending Julius Randle. He was still putting up the leading scoring totals in a lot of games, double-doubles. There were fans defending him with that. Not everyone was doing it because, again, you have to expect some regression from last year. Last year was an anomaly for his career. But to do it without any context, the way he did it, celebrating a big Knicks win. They came back down 25 points against the Celtics. Evan Fournier gets revenge on his former team, 41 points. R.J. Barrett hits a buzzer beater after Jason Tatum ties it with 5 seconds to go. What a thrilling win, now ruined and diminished by that kind of thing. Why? Because you didn't take the shot? This is why I always am annoyed with a lot of these contexts of whose team is it. If there is a problem with that, there's going to be a problem with it with other star players that, oh, you didn't take the shot. Now, I'm not saying every player is like that, but the NBA is the only sport that seems to have that problem on quote-unquote whose team is it.
Pre-Madonnas.
Yeah.
That's what they are.
And sometimes you can get away with it if you have, again, another superstar player that maybe doesn't have as big of an ego, or a veteran that's been able to handle a lot of superstar players like a LeBron James. Now, not every case is like that. And Julius Randle, maybe now getting this kind of new recognition of what he was last year, can't handle that kind of thing. And that's a big problem for him mentally. That's a big problem from him when it comes to a leadership perspective of this team. And just as a starting player in general, just trying to gain chemistry with all these new players. And now you're doing it to the fans, ruining a monumental night for R.J. Barrett and Evan Fournier, and a huge win against a bitter rival. Granted, the Celtics aren't a great team, but they came back down 25 points. They're still a nice defense. They came back the way they did like that. And it's all going to be hindered by your immaturity.
Did you hear that the Knicks had an opportunity early before the season started to go after a superstar player to play beside Julius Randle to give them a chance to win a championship this year. And a lot of the players that they were looking to trade for, it just didn't fit the culture, doesn't fit what the Knicks are looking for. So they didn't go and they didn't jump the gun. They gave Julius Randle a big contract. He took a very small contract for a guy that had the season that he had last year because he wants the Knicks to bring in players. If you don't want to be here, even though you say you do want to be here, you have to be a different player. You have to be a different person. To play in New York and play in front of the world's most famous fans in the arena, you have to play at the top of your game, and you can't be a baby. Listen to LeBron James. Where's his favorite place to play? Madison Square Garden. Kobe Bryant, Madison Square Garden. Michael Jordan, Madison Square Garden. Larry Bird, Madison Square Garden. Magic Johnson, Madison Square Garden. All these players in the past, in the present, always love to play in Madison Square Garden because it's the world's most famous arena. It's a privilege to play over there. But this team, I don't know where it's at. I don't know what Julius Randle is, but he needs to wake up because this team every single week is showing me that there's a lot more problems and a lot less benefit to keeping these younger players like Obi Toppin, like Quickly on the bench and letting these guys play and see what this second hand or these bench players that are playing better than the starters, see what they could do as a starting lineup.
And if you allegedly took more money to quote-unquote have them bring in another superstar player or star player, why not get used to a second or third option role? Why do you have to still think, oh, I have to take every final shot of the game? I've actually said Julius Randle this year, when he does actually pass the ball, has been a good facilitator and improved from where he was even at points last year too. Yet, he still is shooting 42% because he's taking too many bad shots. And early in the shot clock, then all of a sudden your defense gets worn out and their defense doesn't look as good this year. So if you want another player to play with you, one, you don't want to get that kind of reputation that you're going to ruin that other player and they're not going to want to play with you. But also, if you get another sharpshooting type player or a top
Obi
point
Toppin
guard
should be playing.
you have to get it used to not quote unquote taking the final shot every time. You'll get your moments. I'm not saying never have Julius Randle take the final shot. If he's open, he's open. Let him shoot. But he hasn't earned that to do it every time. You're not Damian Lillard. You're not somebody like Devin Booker or Kyrie Irving or Kevin Durant or Steph Curry. You're not somebody like that. You haven't earned that kind of thing. And if you want another superstar to play with you, that's not a good mentality to have.
I think when you look at the big picture with the Knicks, they got to figure out what this team identity is because I don't even think they know what it is. As far as the Brooklyn Nets concern is, well, I don't think there's a concern. Kyrie Irving is back. Now, he's not going to be playing home games because of the whole vaccination. He's not going to be playing in L.A. It will hurt them if he doesn't get the vaccination before the playoffs because you can't have Kyrie Irving play in a series where he's only playing 1 or 2 games and that's it. What is the benefit of that?
Right.
But Kyrie Irving return is definitely going to make this Brooklyn Net team play better. They haven't looked good for the last 2 weeks, week and a half. The other night they won barely and Kyrie Irving was a big part of the win. But once he gets his feet wet and he gets his feet under him, I think Kyrie Irving's going to be a dangerous player, Speedy.
Yeah, he looked good in that first road game against the Pacers. They're not a great team, but they're still a pretty good defensive team. And I think he played close to 30 minutes. They said his minutes were going to be limited, but I think he still played close to 30, 25, 26 minutes. And 22 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists in that game. He was a little rusty to begin, but once he got going, he definitely was fluent. He definitely looked like he had some good chemistry with Kevin Durant still. And that's going to be something that their Nets are going to need because if you don't have that big three to bail out somebody that might have shooting woes. James Harden, we've seen have shooting woes in the playoffs. Blake Griffin's had his playoff woes. He played well for the Nets last year, but he also struggled many times with the Clippers. Kevin Durant's great, but you can't have one guy to win in the playoffs. And the Nets have created a good road identity. I think they've only lost 3 games on the road all year. The problem is they've lost 5 straight home games too. And the Nets, they don't get the fan attraction the Knicks do anyway. We saw them have to sell playoff tickets. Have James Harden go outside and sell playoff tickets. So it's clearly not a great. It's clearly not a great home crowd advantage as it is. So you're going to need all the help you can get, and that help is Kyrie Irving. So he has to get vaccinated to play there because otherwise it's going to be very tough for the Nets, even as a higher seed if they are that. They were the 2 seed in the East coming into the day. But if they're going to get that home court advantage and you're playing 4 out of the 7 games there, that's going to be very hard. And winning on the road, I know they've done it all year. It's still very hard to do in the NBA. And that's why you don't see a lot of like 4 versus 3 NBA final matchups.
Absolutely. And that's going to be a huge question when the trade deadline comes around. Where do the Brooklyn Nets go? Where do the Knicks go? Where do the Lakers go? It's going to be very, very fun.